okay, I'm going to be brainwashed. I'm just going to do architecture. But once I started doing my thesis and there was a level of exploration past that, I was like, wow, if I just go into the architecture industry, or if that's the one thing I've learned about, how am I ever going to grow? How am I going to go into different like aspects of, technology, or how am I going to understand how to actually run a business? And because of that, I then was like, I need to learn more and I need to learn what jobs are out there, what people do besides just like the standardization that's been taught
Hmm.
to me. Because I think unless you major in something, you don't really know what goes on in the world.
No, I mean, I totally pivoted in my career. So
Really?
yes.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what this like podcast is a lot of, is like what, like, how did you pivot? Where did you go? And so, and because, I have friends who, one of my friends, she's a music major, and it's like same thing. She's like, I majored in music, but like, I don't know if I want to do music because it's like a lot of work. Um, so yeah, it's kind of cool to hear how different people do different things. How do you switch? Maybe, how do you come back to it, for what are all the different routes? Because I think a lot of people, they say, okay, you go to college, you get that degree, and you go straight into that, and you do that the rest of your life, and you just go. It's like, what happens if you change as an individual?
No, no, that's definitely what happened to me.
So I guess we'll start before we get into maybe the specifics of how you change, because it's really interesting. So what do you do for a living? You can just give your title.
I'm the head of sales for technology leasing and financing group
Okay, cool.
within a regional bank.
And how many hours do you say you work a week?
I work 50 to 60, depends on the week.
And was that consistent throughout your career, or is
Yeah.
that just because you're now later
No,
on?
I mean, I've been a sales leader for a long time now. Yeah, but even, I mean, early in my career, I started as an accountant
Oh, okay.
before I was in sales, and that was a 65 to 70 hour a week job.
Yeah, crazy. And how much you don't have to say the exact number, but like ballpark, how much do you make a year?
300 to 350.
Okay, cool. So like, yeah, you're getting decent
Yeah,
pay for your work that you're
yeah,
doing. Yeah.
no, I've never, in sales, I've never felt underpaid.
Are you on commission? So you
Yeah, so
okay.
part of my pay is in what my team produces and what I produce.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I guess that could change, but yeah, it's been interesting. I interviewed um person 2 interviews before this, and they do PR, but they get commission based on like basically selling the client on their product.
Hmm.
And they were like, I get paid more than majority of people in pay PR because I actually have that ability to, get a commission instead of just like a standardized rate.
Yeah,
Which
that's a great deal.
yeah, but just I guess up for the benefit of
Yeah,
sales if you're good at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, I mean, knock on wood, I've been lucky.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you like start out wanting to do in your life?
I really didn't know. When I was in college, I had five different majors.
Oh, no,
Uh,
okay.
I, I
Wild.
I played football my first 2 years, so I was a sociology major and then a psychology major because those were the two most popular majors on the football team. And then I kind of decided I wanted to be a teacher and
Okay.
changed my mind after a while there, and went into marketing, and then ultimately into accounting. So I did have to take an extra year because I bounced around from department to department, and I really only landed in accounting because I got something in our guidance office that was the highest starting salary.
Okay.
So there was no passion behind it. It was
Yeah.
just making the most money I could out of college.
Okay. I guess that's pretty traditional. So probably people go into like investment banking and stuff
Yeah,
that way.
yeah.
And all right, so you went to college. I guess you sports. You're probably more interested in that.
Yeah, I didn't really have I wasn't a bad student, but I
Yeah.
didn't have a passion for anything in particular. Now, ironically, as I've gotten older and the volunteer work that I do, I really do have a passion
Mm.
for teaching and what I do now, as far as mentorship goes and training people. It's something I really enjoy doing. Had I stayed in teaching, I think I would have been pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, ultimately moved around to to a great degree.
Was there any bit of fear while you were like moving around? You were like, "Oh, I have no idea what I wanna do. Ah, just go
Not
pick
not at
something."
not at that age,
Okay.
when you're 21, 22, you really don't have the horizon, you don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have tuition to pay, you don't have any of those
Yeah.
things, right? I didn't even pay for my own car. So, I had a lot of growing up to do after college. But no, I really was confused about, not confused in a, an unhappy sense, but was unsure of really what I wanted to do and how I was going to make a living.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because I guess there is sometimes, like, a level of uncertainty. Hi, Clover.
I knew that was going to happen.
Come here. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Go, go.
Come here.
Come on. Come with me.
Give me here. I'll pick you up. Come here. I got you. Oh, come on, silly boy.
Uh, and, and and there's my co-star.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was funny. Um, so you said that you went into accounting. Did you go straight into accounting job or?
Yeah. So I graduated college, and it was really difficult to find a job the year I graduated
Really?
college. Yeah. I mean, if you knew somebody who had a job, it
Yeah.
was kind of like an event.
When did you graduate?
I graduated in 1980.
Okay. Was there anything like big going on then?
No, it was just a bad job market.
Okay.
Nothing in particular that caused it. Just was, a slower economy, I guess, and happened to meet a guy who needed an auditor,
Hmm.
and he liked me, and it was probably in a field that I really didn't want to do a lot in. It was probably the thing I wanted to do least, and but it was a job, and I was it was December. It took me 6 months after I
Wow.
graduated, so I was falling off my parents' insurance,
Yeah.
and I needed a job, and they offered me one, and I took it.
So you were an auditor for what type of company?
It was I've always been in banking,
Okay.
so
Okay.
always been in banking and financial services.
I
So
guess that's not a pretty bad deal.
no, no, it's not. I mean, it's a pretty vanilla job, right? There's nothing that makes you wake up in the morning and want to do it,
Yeah.
other than the paycheck.
Yeah.
I was really only an auditor for a couple of months before that same person said, you're really not a very good auditor, and that was what he said to me. I was verbatim. You're not really a good auditor at all. But you have a lot of skills that would fit in this particular part of our accounting department in financial planning and analysis, which is more strategic planning and doing long term 5 year plans and things like that. And I wanted to stay in the company because I just started grad school and I
Oh,
just
okay.
sat for the CPA exam. So if I quit, that would have to pay back the money that they had fronted for
Yeah.
school, and I didn't want to do that either. So and that was actually a great move for me. It was, at the time, the perfect job.
Really? Why was it the perfect job?
I mean, it taught me a lot about the business, and it was a really challenging job from an hours perspective.
Hmm.
It was a very dynamic role. Things were changing all the time because it's a plan, and you're doing long term planning for our business unit, and I learned a lot of different things, and it was actually the people I had to work with and interact with in doing those plans that ultimately I made the contacts that got me into sales. So it
Oh.
was it was a pretty fortuitous move from that
Yeah.
perspective.
It's pretty interesting that you had almost like someone mentor you into that role. Like to some extent, like they weren't just like, oh, this kid's terrible at auditing. I'm just going to sink. You kind of, it
No,
seemed like a
he
mentor.
I've actually had quite a few people in my career that I've really been grateful to have because they were the right people at the right time. And as a manager now, one of the things that I really am passionate about is making sure I'm positioning people for advancement,
Yeah.
because I've had quite a few people that really facilitated my career advancement. and sometimes at their own expense. So,
Really?
yeah, I've been fortunate that way, no doubt.
How did they how was it at their own expense? Like, I feel like there's always a benefit, you know?
Well, the when I moved into a sales role for the first time, I was leaving the financial planning and analysis role I was in, and my manager at the time, um, there was it was a team of four of us, a manager and three other people. One of the people had gotten promoted. One of the people had quit, and it was just me and him doing all this work. And there was a new hire who was just coming up to speed, but it was, it's like drinking out of a fire hose when
Yeah.
you're learning at that, you know, learning. You're not learning much at 10 o'clock at night when you're working,
No, yeah.
and honestly, he I got offered the job, and I think he could have stopped it if he wanted to, and
Mm,
he just wasn't that guy, and really, you know, was like, no, I love seeing my people get stolen from me. And that's the line I use all the time. I've had more people hired out from under me than any of my peers in any of the jobs I've had. Right.
that's crazy. Just
And
because you want them to grow, I guess.
no, I do. I think that's if you're going to be a manager, that's the thing. Aside from your objectives for the company, right? You should be building your team up
Yeah,
and letting them succeed on their own.
definitely. Wow, that's kind of wild. Because I know, like, there's a thing called like gardening leave where they don't, you take a time off after a job, but you're signed to basically like a non-disclosure and like, oh, you're not allowed to actually get a job because if you want to go to another job, you need to take 6 months or something. So
Hmm.
A, security, and B, like, they don't steal it. But it seems like in your job, you're just kind of like, okay,
No, I mean, my career has pretty much been spent in one company that's been acquired and changed,
really,
and yeah, up until this year when I finally kind of left and went to the job I'm in now. I had really kind of stayed in different roles within. It was different companies with different names, but I never quit. It
yeah,
was always a change names due to an acquisition or a merger or something like that.
that's pretty wild. So you basically went from you started in the same company as a auditor, and
Hmm.
then you became an accountant, and then I guess you got pulled for someone in sales pulled you there?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Somebody. It was a kind of a low level sales job, right? Because I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about sales. Certainly an unusual tack to take, and so they kind of gave me you know, a job where I really couldn't hurt anybody. And, but it was a great job to learn. And I was working with somebody who was, again, a person who was a really good teacher. And because being in sales is very different than being an accountant.
Yeah.
Being an accountant, there's a lot of rigor to it and there's a schedule to it. In sales, you really are on your own. You have to know how to work independently and you have to know how to work with nobody watching you and you have to know how to be productive
Yeah.
in your home, at an airport, in traffic, in the car. You have to be working a lot when, in times when you wouldn't expect to be. And
I
that's a skill, right? You don't just learn that.
Is it cuz like you are constantly like on call or someone's about to like, you said you're in the
It
car.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, sales never stops. When you're customer facing, that is the thing, right? Responsiveness is always the most important thing you can be. It's not the news, it's delivering the news, right? Whether it's
Mm,
good or bad, people want to hear it right away. And there's just a lot going on, particularly as your territory gets bigger, your job gets bigger, or in my last role, I had a team of 60 people
wow.
under me. Now they didn't all work for me directly, but 60 people, right? That's a lot of phone calls in the
Yeah.
course of a day, and that's a lot of check-ins and how are you doing, and taking the temperature of people to make sure they're doing all right.
Yeah.
And so it is a lot, and I love it. It's my favorite part of the job. It's certainly not the corporate bureaucracy part of it, right? That almost reminds me of accounting, but the check-ins and what can I do to help you conversations are really valuable.
Yeah, and I guess that leads me to the question, did you go into sales because you enjoyed it more, you thought you enjoyed it more, or was it a pay thing?
No, I knew right away I wasn't going to be an accountant for the
Okay.
rest of my life. In spite of the fact that I started grad school, and like I said, I sat for the CPA exam and did all the things you're supposed to do from a career perspective as an accountant. I knew that wasn't what I
Yeah.
wanted to do. I still didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew what I didn't, which is
Something.
yeah, which is
Yeah.
important. As the industry changed, there were opportunities for me to kind of work, and get exposed to how the sales and business side of the company worked, and I knew I wanted to do something in that space, and right, those are the conversations that ultimately facilitated me getting the sales job, and
Wow.
and and I knew right away that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I knew right away I was good at it, and that is the good thing about sales, and it's one of the things I do with people who I work with who aren't salespeople. Try it, right?
Yeah.
Nothing bad will happen if it doesn't work, and you're a good employee. You can always go back, but some people have, some people it wasn't their particular cup of tea, or they just weren't good at it, or didn't like the 10 o'clock at night phone
Yeah.
calls. Didn't like. Yeah, you got to check on vacation, you got to check your emails and things like that. But it was something I always enjoyed. I knew I wanted to do it.
It's interesting that you say that you always are kind of on call, but then you work before you said you worked 50-hour week. So how does that is it more like after the, 8, 9 hours a day, you're just
Yeah.
periodically doing it?
Yeah, no, I mean, day kind of tends to end, but around 6 o'clock, but there's always something going on that you need to check later in the
Mm.
evening on, and just make sure, and sometimes it's nothing, you
Yeah.
know, sometimes it's something, but it's not, there's not, there doesn't tend to be a lot of like 9 o'clock at night conference
Yeah.
calls or anything like that. It's more kind of what I said earlier is you have to kind of be self motivated as a salesperson, right? You have to, care enough to get up off the couch and go to your laptop for 20 minutes, and make sure something is getting done or has gotten done. It's not things you have to do; it's things you kind of have to want to do.
And I guess that's also part of probably like the commission pay
Yeah,
too,
yeah, no, when your pay depends on it, you're a lot more
Yeah,
motivated to check, for
definitely.
sure.
Yeah. And kind of going back to how you switched through, auditing, accounting, and then sales, which I assume you stayed in until you left the company, just different.
Yeah, no, I've been in sales, and the job I'm in now is a similar role, but also as a sales leader.
Hmm. Would you say that horizontal movement is easier than like through a company, jumping from roles in other departments is easier than getting a new job in a completely different company in a completely different role?
So yeah, that's a great question. Yes, for sure. Because and I'm learning this now after spending 30 years at one company. Right there's It's easier to go between jobs in the same company without a doubt,
Yeah.
because you know who the people are, you know what not to say, you know where to go to for things. First month in this job was hard because I didn't know who anybody was. I didn't know where to go to ask questions. I didn't even know the number for the help desk,
Yeah.
and so and all of those things are things you take for granted once you have them all, and once they're in kind of the Rolodex of your mind. But you really have to figure all that stuff out. And I haven't. The bank I'm in now is smaller than the division I ran in my last job,
That's wild.
and and I still haven't figured out how to navigate it. 4 months later,
Yeah.
I'm way better than I was, but yeah, it's definitely hard going. When you only know one language and now you have to speak a whole different one.
Yeah, and would you recommend that people who are maybe unsure about their career to go to a bigger company where they have those
Yes,
opportunities? Okay.
yeah, I do because, and I think I said yes right away, and I think you'd probably get both sides of that answer, because in smaller companies, you tend to your job tends to be not as narrowly defined,
Yeah.
so you
Okay,
wind
true.
up doing more things.
Yeah.
Where in a large bank, in a large company, right, your job is very very narrowly defined, and this is your job, and don't do that because that's Bob's job,
Yeah.
and but I think what you do get, those smaller companies tend to be flatter,
Mm.
and there's not as much room for advancement because there's really only a couple of steps you can take before there's a logjam of people. Where in a larger company, you do have the opportunity to kind of hopscotch around and find a role,
Mm.
in different divisions or different groups or different departments, and there's certainly more opportunities just because they're bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting, like, as someone who's looking for, like, what I want to do or other jobs out there, that's always back in my mind. I'm like, oh, I guess I can just get a position, maybe a position I won't like as much, but at a company that's big enough that there's the opportunity to maybe
And I
mess
think
around with it.
in a career like you have that is creative,
Yeah.
right, and banking is not,
Yeah.
right. You're not, it's money, right, and unless they change the color from green to something else, right, there's not a lot that changes. I think when you're in a creative industry or a creative role, I think sometimes getting exposed in a smaller company may be better because, um, there is a bit more of an ability to freeform things.
Yeah.
I don't have that talent. That's why I'm in banking. I do a lot of things really well. Right? I'll never invent anything. But what I do well, I do really well. But I think it fits my skill set.
Yeah.
I think much like a lot of things in life, it's not a one size fits all.
Definitely. And you said there wasn't much creativity, but do you think there's elements of creativity in the ways that maybe you have to like sell to people
There
or
is, yeah.
techniques or strategies?
From a when you're a salesperson, it's more art than science.
Okay, yeah.
You have to know how to, and the biggest thing I learned as a salesperson is selling to the people inside your own company is the most
Wild.
important thing that you can do. Not, I mean, selling is hard
Yeah.
because people are unpredictable and companies are customers are unpredictable. But selling internally and making sure you're presenting things the right way and you're presenting things in a way that are right for the company and not self-serving,
Yeah.
are critical. Right? I've seen you know a lot of salespeople who just haven't been successful because they've got no credibility with people internally, and therefore they never get the benefit of the doubt,
Yeah.
and that's makes your job even harder than it already is. So that was one of the real important things I learned was to make sure I knew how to interact with all of those people internally, and I think because of my background I had an advantage there,
Yeah.
because I could speak the language of our risk people or our credit people, who wanted to make sure that we weren't going to take a loss on something.
Why would you be having to sell within the company? You know?
Because if you take lending as an example, if there's a questionable credit, a, a questionable request to lend money to somebody, not questionable like it's going to be illegal, but questionable is this somebody who's going to pay us back or not?
Mm.
The clear answer is really almost never there.
Okay.
And when you get a mortgage for the first time, you'll see how much due diligence goes into just lending to somebody. There's a lot of it, and right, there's a whole department of people who are looking for reasons why we might not get paid back, and we want to stop from
Mm,
lending this company money. And I'm in commercial lending,
okay.
so it's not, not doing mortgages, but or lending to individuals. We're lending to other companies, and there's always a big risk there, and you have to figure out what the right answer is. And sometimes it's a lot of work and a lot of people digging through a lot of numbers to figure out what the right answer is. So, the selling internally is, here's why I think we're not going to lose money, and doing so in a way that, as a salesperson, I'm not just telling you that because I want to get a
Yeah.
commission, but I think it's the right thing to do, and that was always my reputation, was I would do the right thing for the business first. And I I think that was one of the reasons I have been successful, is, those are the things, uh, your internal uh, view, how people look at you, is really, that's your currency within a company. And I was fortunate that mine would tended to be, really solid.
Yeah. And so, as someone in sales, you'd recommend being like ethical about it, because I know some people are just like, "I'll make money. Who cares?"
No, there's look, banking in particular is a regulated environment,
Yeah.
right? If you're not ethical, you're not going to last long
Really.
anyway. But yes, I mean, I've met more than my share of, you know,
Yeah.
stereotypical used car
Yeah.
salesmen, and they don't last long,
Hmm.
and they tend to not be successful. Right? That doesn't work like it used to.
Not like the Enron scandal.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. That stuff is. I mean, there was certainly a period of time where you could pull a lot of that stuff. That time isn't now. But no, I think no matter what you're doing, you want your brand is what you sell, right? In
Mm,
your career, wherever you are. And it follows you everywhere. It's almost, when I was growing up, you get trouble in school, and they say it would go on your permanent record. Look, everybody knows everybody now,
yeah.
right? In whatever industry you're in, it's small, right? You're never more than 3 degrees away from the person you're talking to.
Mm,
I was talking to somebody the other day in Hong Kong, and we knew the same person from 10 years
that's
ago.
wild. Yeah.
And you're going to find that in every industry, and you don't want to be that person who, you know, the first thing they think of is, "Oh, you should have seen
Yeah.
what they did."
Yeah.
Like, I'd never want to be that person. And no, and that's always what you want to be most protective of, is how you're viewed by others professionally,
Mm.
personally, and I think that goes a long way.
Hmm. Yeah, and I guess that's something maybe not a lot of people think about nowadays with social media, because everything is just out there. I don't know if you ever do any hiring, but do you ever like look at someone, maybe for clients, you're looking at their social media, you're looking at their
I
marketing?
do not, but when we're hiring somebody, part of the hiring process is we go and we look them up on Facebook, and
Mm,
obviously LinkedIn is a huge component of how we network professionally. But from a social media perspective, that's part of the background check, is making sure that there's not anything there that could cause us concerns down the road. Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal.
what are some red flags that would show up on people's like social medias, LinkedIn's?
I mean, red flags for as a sales, hiring for a sales role, is really gonna, if it looks like somebody's out burning the midnight oil 5 times a week, right? And they're doing Jello shots, and it's time stamped 4:30 in the
Yeah.
morning. Well, look, that's something. Part of being a salesperson is you've got to learn restraint, because you're going to be at a lot of conferences with a lot of
Yeah.
people drinking a lot of booze, and you've got to know you're a representative of the company you work for. So you want to, from my perspective, and they're all different roles, have different ones. But for us, it's certainly to make sure that, right, we're not hiring somebody who um, doesn't know how to present themselves as a good representative of our company.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like probably after those conferences, it gets to the point where you're like, okay, would I switch to the non-alcoholic beer? No one will ask any questions.
No, you do have to know that. It's kind of one of those things you do have to learn. Right? And it's kind of what I said before, right? Sales is a lot of stuff that's unsupervised, and
Mm.
you can, and it's happened to all of us where you see your bar bill at the end of the night, you're like, oh, you know, I'm in trouble. My boss is going to be mad, but then and that's just part of growing as a salesperson.
Hopefully, you get some sales though. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it didn't happen a lot.
yeah.
Won't say it didn't happen, but it didn't happen a lot.
You're like racket, be like, oh, maybe he'll be mad, but I got some sales first. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah, it's no. Ultimately, in the long term, it worked out. It didn't go too haywire too many times.
Yeah, I guess yeah, it didn't hinder you. So I guess going back to just like within sales itself, were you in the same department of sales, or is there different? I don't know anything about banking sales. What do you guys?
Yeah. So it was really different flavors of the same cookie. Kind of different divisions, and kind of the job expanding. My experience is primarily focused on technology
Mm,
types of companies and assets. So, and that's really what I've done a lot in my career. In the last 5 years, what technology is very different than what it was when I started in sales,
yeah,
because now technology is software, right? A lot of it is very intangible. If you just think about a desktop and what it looked like 10 years ago versus, a lot of people don't even have one now. But, also, even if you think about manufacturing and things like robotics, it's,
mm,
less about, some giant assembly line now and all these big machines that surrounded it, and, robotics and, things that aren't, are really, operated by one guy with a laptop.
so you're basically like making sure the software, you're selling all those little like precious software things to each
What
machine.
I do is get the financing for it, because a lot
Okay.
of times it's very expensive.
Uh,
So I'm not selling the actual technology.
okay.
I'm selling one of the vehicles by which to finance that, or a company that sells it. How do they finance their business, because they've got to buy from a distributor, or somebody, a manufacturer of technology. So we do a lot, with those types of companies as well as their customers.
Interesting. And yeah, I never thought that would be within banking. If it's like, I don't know. I guess whenever I think of tech, I think like somehow it just magically appears. So I was like, oh,
No,
we coded it. It
yeah,
works.
no, and if you think about, most, anytime you've gotten, kind of a phone plan, and it comes with a new phone, generally, you're financing that phone through the
Mm,
contract that you have. It's just embedded in there, and you don't even realize it. And a lot of what we've done is, develop structures like that for various companies.
that's really cool. And I guess maybe the commercial, it's less. I don't know if you feel like this. Maybe it feels less stressful than the personal, because I feel like that would stress me out to be like, oh, I'm dealing with your mortgage and
No, it's still
or just
stressful.
really.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. For different reasons, right? Like I said, it's lending to a company is not necessarily so straightforward,
Mm.
because you never really know what's underneath the financials.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
that's why you have this big risk organization that's always behind you, pulling everything apart. But it can be really stressful because they take their time making decisions,
Yeah.
and of course, on the other side, you want to get something closed as quickly as possible. So it's still stressful, not for the same reason, but yeah, I mean, when you're dealing with smaller companies, though, that's the family business. So,
Mm,
you
that's
know,
true.
every bit as meaningful as the mortgage on your house is the company that Grandpa started in 1927.
You're like, great, okay, let's not
Yeah,
mess this up.
yeah, and yeah, now you gotta sign on the dotted line that if you don't pay us, we're gonna take your company.
Yeah,
Uh,
great. Do you lose money if the sale takes longer to go through?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
interesting.
I mean, you don't. It becomes less
Yeah,
profitable,
yeah.
right? Because more people now have to touch it, and right anytime, and I mean, it's just like anything else. The more people who touch it, the higher the probability is that somebody does something wrong.
Yeah.
And just sometimes we do something called pre-funding where we lend the money in advance, and the longer that goes, the we're money's not free, we're paying interest on it. So so if it goes longer than expected, we lose money from that perspective.
That's pretty absurd. I never even thought about it's kind of like when you like options trading, like there's a
Hmm.
decay the longer you keep the
Yeah,
contract
yeah,
for, and
yeah. No,
it's
it's similar to that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it's like a percentage of it. Never even thought of. Um, I guess to kind of take a little bit of a turn, sales. Would you say that this is a job that you would recommend for people to get into, or is there a very specific type that you said should get into this job?
I have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I think everybody should talk to whatever. Everybody should talk to a customer at some point
Mhm.
early in their career. I think it's a good thing. I've recommended it for my kids, right?
Mm.
Whatever, however, customer is defined, and it's got all kinds of different definitions. But yeah, I think it's something everybody should do, uh, and I think it makes you a better person wherever you go from there.
Interesting. Why would you say it makes you a better person?
Because I think you have the customer perspective. When you talk to people within an organization, you can see the people who have never talked to a customer,
Yeah.
and kind of what may seem very straightforward to them is once you leave the confines of that cubicle, become a little more convoluted, and I think it gives you an appreciation. And empathy for what a salesperson's going through and the decision making that a customer has to do, right?
Interesting.
Which is in and of itself not always easy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess I never, really think about the customer, and maybe that's why they always say that people who are like
Yeah,
work at cafes or retail, they always come in with these like probably great skills to sales because they're literally like helping people sell coffee or sell a
oh,
shirt.
there's an orange thing over there, and it actually is a ruler that
Yeah.
I got like 25 years ago, and it says we are all salespeople.
Mm.
No, and I believe that, right?
Yeah.
I think anytime and then it doesn't mean you have to do it for a career, but talking to customers, I think, gives you a good perspective of the other side of the business.
Mm. And what would be advice for people? Maybe they're young, maybe they're old, of like people that want to get into sales.
I I think there's only one way to do it, and it's the same way as getting into a pool.
Just do it.
You just have to jump in, and yeah, because if you do it halfway, you're not going to be
Yeah.
successful. And you've got to be confident in it, and you've got to recognize. You got to be honest with yourself about what your strengths and weaknesses are, and I mean, I had to make that evaluation myself. Like, what am I as a salesperson? Right? I'm highly organized. I'm highly motivated. Am I going to be like the most dynamic guy with hair slicked back? Obviously not. But I have a different tact as a salesperson, but it works for me. But understanding what that is and understanding what your strengths are, what your limitations are, and trying it in a way that accentuates your strengths. I think whatever it is you do, sales or otherwise, but particularly in sales, because you're going to be working on commission,
Yeah, yeah.
and doing it in a way, but you can't do it and kind of try it. It's the old adage, and Columbus found the New World. He burned his ships, and that made his sailors very motivated to make it work. because they got no way back.
Yeah.
I think you have to do it that way. The other way, if you think there's a safety net there, um, sales is a risk, right? It's all about you know good months and bad months.
And how would you recommend someone gets into it who's never, or maybe like they didn't do a stereotypical route of like, oh, I got an internship in sales and then I graduated and got a sales job.
I think you talk to your manager, right? Yeah, managers should always be your best source of your career pathing,
Mm,
and your direct supervisor, and I didn't get into sales, from A to B, right? I got involved in different projects that allowed me to meet people and
mm,
see what they were doing and work on various teams. And I think, if somebody really is interested in looking at it, talk talk to their manager, because I think there's always those opportunities. There's
yeah.
always those projects.
What would you say about people who are not in the company? Are you open to people like reaching out to you and being like, "Hey, can we get coffee?" And then you help them
I
get a job, or is that
I do
not a
that all the
thing?
time. No,
Really?
never a bad. It's never a bad time spent meeting people in other companies,
Mm,
in networking, and I think way more now than 10 or 15 years ago. Even I think networking is how people are going to find every job they get.
yeah. Yeah.
So I think any opportunity you get to meet somebody, um, whether, even if it's just, hey, I want to put a face to a name because, you know Joe and I know Joe, and, it'd be good for us to meet. Maybe we can help each other. The job I'm in now, that's how I got this job.
Interesting. And I guess I never asked, and you don't have to say, but like, why did you switch jobs? Just you
I
don't want to
actually,
mix.
it was a reduction in force. I actually got an early retirement from my last
Oh,
job.
okay.
I took a couple of months off, and then, kind of decided, kind of doing a lot of what we're talking about. What do I want to do for, the last part of my career?
Mm,
And where do I want to do it?
yeah.
And, that's where I landed at kind of a smaller organization where, I can take the skills I learned for over 30 years and see if works over here.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. Because I don't know, I see it often that when people maybe they're older and they're like, "Oh, I got let off" or something, they just like I guess I don't see it, but I've seen like movies and stuff, and they like freak out and they're like, "Okay, I'm done," and they just like, "Oh, I'll just live off whatever retirement I see."
No,
So
I mean, at a certain point in time, that makes sense. I'm still too young for that.
yeah,
You know,
you're not
so we'll
70
see.
yet.
We'll see how the Powerball plays out tonight.
Okay, yeah. Maybe we'll be able to quit working.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. We
yeah.
we may have part two of this.
Okay, yeah, and then you're like, actually, I'm retired. I live in a
Yeah.
multi-million-dollar mansion in Bel Air. Complete
Yes.
180. Yeah,
No, it could be a little. It could be a lot different if I get the $1 billion,
yeah.
but I'm not counting on it.
Okay. Um, I just like what you're saying about networking. I think that's really interesting too because nowadays there's so many like just jobs on LinkedIn, and I feel like you could so hard to get a job through that, just like the portal.
No, you
Yeah,
you can't. It's just a rabbit hole you'll never get out of.
yeah,
The best way to find a job, one, is to have a job.
yeah,
And I mean, that sounds silly, but it is true. It's easier to find a job when you're working,
mm,
because you are talking with people
yeah,
in your industry circle.
and
That it's not because you're networking necessarily, but you're talking to people who generally do what you do, or kind of what you do. But yeah, growing that network of people, and making sure you're cultivating that, right? You're talking to them. If you're on a business trip in Chicago, hey, I'm in town. Do
yeah.
you want to grab a drink? Doing those things to meet those people is really a key part of what you do to drive your own career.
And I guess you have some leverage there too. You're like, oh, I'm already working. Like, you want
Yeah.
me. I'm a desirable candidate. Instead of
And yeah, I mean, look, there's plenty of people who aren't working who are desirable candidates,
yeah,
but I think it's you just tend to have more opportunities for those conversations with your working when you're
mhm.
working, because you're talking about work
Yeah,
for
yeah.
9 hours a day,
Oh my
ten
god,
hours
yeah.
a day. So yeah, I mean that's really what that adage is. It doesn't. I never felt it was like, oh, because you're not working. It's, you just tend to be having work conversations
Yeah.
all day, right? And career stuff inevitably comes up.
And I guess this is probably like one of the last questions, probably lead to another, but where would you say that AI is going to take sales, especially in like banking sales that
It'll be an interesting one, right? And we see it already. We see it in, risk and credit and how we look at customers. There's very predictable patterns in lending, right? You both in, environmentally, like, so you can see things happening in the economy, and 6 months from now there's a whole segment of people we lent money to that are going to default.
Mm,
So AI has become, a lot more useful in those kind of predictive parts of our business. But from a sales perspective, certainly not when you're talking to customers specifically. But I think in, what we call the prospecting part of sales, which is a lot of outbound calls and calling to vendors, calling to customers, calling to manufacturers. I think it gives you more data to mine what's out there on the internet. You can refine searches using Chat GPT
yeah.
way better than I could have ever done it by just Googling things, for sure. So it's built-in efficiencies. It'll certainly remove some of the, jobs long term, that are probably more entry level jobs. But I
Yeah.
think where it's really going to have an impact is on all of the areas around sales.
I was gonna say it's like maybe there's not the intern anymore who is like, all right, go research this company for us,
No,
go figure it out.
yeah, because AI can get it to you
Yeah.
in 30 seconds.
Whereas like probably the job it's actually like convincing the client,
Yeah, that
convincing the
that part
company.
that part will never,
Yeah.
go away, right? Because there's always a face-to-face aspect of it, but a lot of the administrative work that goes around it definitely will be impacted.
Cool. And I guess last question is, do you have any like advice for people or with AI, with wanting to get into sales or just people in sales now or
I,
how they
the
should
the
change or grow?
the best advice I ever got was, don't be somebody you're not if you're
Okay.
going to be in sales, because you've got to be that person forever.
Yeah, that's
and,
great.
and that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Right, and that's kind of, along the lines of what I was saying, right? Everybody's got a different sales approach,
Yeah.
and you know, yeah, cater to the skills that you got, the positives, the strengths, and always be that person, and always, don't be afraid to fail.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much. Cool. Thanks.
That was easy.